Welcome to Planetary Gig Talk, Tales of Music and Magic. I'm your host, Jefferson Glassy, Chief Spiritual Dude of the Planetary Gig Society, whose mission is making connections through music with the intention of bringing peace. And today, a beautiful day here at the worldwide headquarters of the Planetary Gig Society in Studio 2. Very happy to be talking for the fabulous singer, friend, Miss Nina Casey.
Hi.
Nina. Thanks so much for taking time to come over and share some thoughts about music. First of all, I remember you from the Archie Edwards Blues Heritage Foundation, the barbershop, but also from Blues Week at Davis and Elkins College a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure we had classes at the same time or something, but the barbershop people tend to hang around a little bit together. But recently you sort of you have been coming back in my consciousness as I see the ads for you and Jeff Clare playing, and we saw you play not too long ago at Mr. Henry's. It's really fabulous what you're doing. And
thank you.
And just really wanted to talk about how it happened. And
well, thank you for having me, first of all.
Sure.
It's kind of exciting. I've never sat down and recorded a podcast before, so I'm excited.
Yeah, it's pretty wild and crazy, You never know what might happen. I'm not sure exactly where you're from. I don't know if it's around here, elsewhere, but when you were growing up, wherever that was there music in your house? Did your parents play music? Did you listen to music? Did they listen to music? Did you sang probably as a little kid some? And tell us a little bit about your musical history and origins.
Well, I am from Kankakee, Illinois, which is about an hour south of Chicago. It's sort of the first city outside of Chicago, not really a suburb. And
is that near Joliet?
No, it's farther south than Joliet. Joliet is still. Now you're making me guess.
Almost a suburb. That's where
it's almost a suburb. It's kind of a suburb. Yeah, it's sort of one of the outer suburbs. But I'm terrible at geography.
Well, that's where Joe Filisko lives, who's my harmonica hero.
Yeah. So. Oh, I love Joe.
Yeah. Me too.
He's so good. And yeah, so I grew up nearish to Chicago, and there sort of was always music in our house. My grandfather is a classical musician and a music teacher. He plays the French horn. And my uncle is also a music teacher, plays the French horn. And wow. And so I think there's sort of a history of music there. My mom's stories always sort of revolve around the students that were in the house and having to be quiet, and sort of my grandparents always listening to classical music and sort of fighting for time with the record player and stuff.
Do you remember them playing when you were growing up?
I remember going to the symphony and hearing my grandfather play. I also remember sort of my mom leaning over and going, my uncle would play as well, and my mom would sort of comment about how my grandfather was the better player, so I do, and I my early memories of being at my grandparents' house was waking up in the morning because they got up super early, and the house would just be filled with this sort of just slightly above soft classical music, and it was just everywhere. As soon as you walked down the stairs, they had it in every room, and you would sort of make your way into the kitchen hearing kitchen sounds. So I have some beautiful memories of that. My dad is not musical at all. So my mom plays piano. She also played organ and oboe. But I don't remember a lot of that. I remember we had a piano, and Mom would play it sometimes, and she would sing a lot. And my early memories are of my mom singing. And while she cleaned, I have this very, very beautiful, strong memory of watching my mom clean the living room when I was probably like 3 years old, and singing Barbra Streisand Yentl on the top of her lungs as she moved through the house cleaning. And it's sort of one of those, it's a beautiful thing. And I think, I don't know, I was thinking about it on the way over here, like, oh, what is it why do I sing? I don't really remember not ever wanting to. And I imagine it probably had to do with that, because looking back, I think my mom was always singing. We sang in the car together. There was
so you used to sing
always
a lot,
music on,
even when
she
you
was
were
around.
Do you remember singing when you were 3 or 4 or 5 and that sort of thing with her?
Yeah, and I remember I had friends who had siblings who were the singer all the time. Like, they would sing, "We're in the car today, having a good time, blah blah blah." They would just sort of, that was how they narrated their kidness, was through singing. I wasn't one of those, but I had my own record collection. My mom would buy me records that I was interested in, and so
like at grade school, sort of.
Well, even before, in kindergarten, by that point, I had several Cabbage Patch records, and I think I had an Amy Grant record. And my parents didn't love the Cabbage Patch Kids, and they definitely weren't fans of Amy Grant, but I liked it. So,
and you sang along with them.
Oh, I loved singing along with them.
Yeah.
That was my favorite thing, was learning all of that music, and I would just play them over and over and over again. And we didn't... Growing up, there was not a TV on the main section of the house. So music was always on. There was, the radio a little bit, but more things were being played, and singing along was always allowed. And I loved doing that.
And then in grade school, did you take lessons singing, or did you have sort of an informal, you just used to sing along with songs, or did you ever do some formal voice training, or were you in the church choir or something like that? Or
I remember in grade school there was a choir that you could join when I was maybe in 2nd grade, and I did that, and I really liked it. And I remember being pulled out because I had good breath support, or at least that's what she said. I think the reality is that I knew how to sing loud, not necessarily properly. So I did that for a little while. I don't remember how long. And I remember entering like a talent show when I was in 4th grade and singing for that. And then in junior high, I think I made opportunities to sing when they became available. I remember in junior high, there was a talent show, and I signed up for that and did. Amy Grant was becoming very popular then. That was when she was sort of exploding onto the mainstream scene, and she had some pop hits, and I remember doing one of those, including the dance from her video there. And around that time, I got into a choir in junior high and had the opportunity to do solo and ensemble, which is basically you learn a piece, and then you perform it for judges, and they tell you how good you are or not. You sort of are competing against yourself. And I did that, and with my choir teacher. And at the end of it, she said, I have a friend who's a very good voice teacher, and she's going to have some openings this summer. She's very high in demand, but I think I could get you in. And she talked to my mom, and so we did that. I took this summer slot, just thinking it was going to be a summer slot with this voice teacher, and started learning classical voice technique with Rachel Jensen, and I loved it. I remember Mom very seriously telling me that this required an hour of practice every day, and it was a lot of money, and you needed to take it seriously. But I don't remember it actually being that hard. Yeah. Oh, and it was so much fun. Rachel and I really clicked, and I loved going there, and I loved what she was teaching me. It was hard and interesting, and unlike choirs, you could hear yourself.
Yeah.
And I really liked that. Yeah. I think some people are like choir people, and then there are people who are really solo singers, and there are people who are both, but I am definitely a solo singer. I'm not good at what you need to be good at to be in a choir. You have to be all about blending voice, and it's not my thing.
Oh, interesting. So how long did you take lessons from her? A couple years or?
A handful of years. So I think that was last year of junior high, and then all through high school.
So you clocked a lot of time and put in a lot of effort learning.
Yeah.
And singing and spending time with a teacher. So then, after high school, did you ever sing in groups back then other than the choir? Did you have any ensembles you played with? What'd you do in sort of college years and into your 20s?
Well, in high school, I was forced to be in the choirs. That was the deal. You want voice lessons, you have to do choir. And then I also did musicals, and I got in the musicals. I had whatever the lead singing role was. That was, I think that was true all 4 years. Yeah, I had heavy singing roles, and then in college, I don't really understand what happened, but I
have parts of my life like that too.
Yeah, and I think about it all the time because it's just such a strange thing. I don't know, maybe it's that beautiful mess, right? You're never going to be able to pull it all the way apart. But I had one school in particular I really wanted to go to. I wanted to go to Knox College in Galesburg because they had this incredible international population, this group, a student body that was really had a lot of power within the school. It was small. It was near home. And that's where I wanted to go. And I had decided by that point that I didn't want to be a professional musician. I knew I probably had what was necessary to do that, but I didn't want to be poor. And I didn't love,
it's
I
interesting.
loved singing the classical music, but I didn't love the music. Like I didn't sit around listening to classical music outside of what I was singing. It wasn't my thing. And you were more likely to hear me listening to hip hop or punk or, stuff like that. And so I wanted to go to this school. It was not a music school. And I tried out for scholarships in the drama department and the music department. And I got the drama scholarship, and I didn't get the music scholarship. And I'm a far better musician than I ever was an actor, like by far. And I thought, well, okay, this is a choral school, and I don't do choral. I don't want to do choral stuff. Oh, well, and I don't know why, but I just didn't. I didn't sing. I didn't practice anymore. I didn't have a teacher anymore, and I didn't really miss it. And
then how long did that last?
About 15 years.
15 years.
Yeah. So in the duration, I got married. That probably encouraged the lack of music because I married somebody who was not the sort you could sing in the car with. Huh. And
no car karaoke.
No car karaoke. I think singing in the car is like the best, right? When you can just belt. And when you can do that with people you care about, like there's something really special about that.
That's
and
a good point.
It's terrible. It never sounds good, but
that's a good point.
I really like doing that. It's sort of my test now, whether or not it's a good relationship. Do I feel comfortable singing in the car with you?
So then, I guess fast forward a little bit to, we fast forwarded to the barbershop, or
yeah,
there must have been some.
So I got divorced.
Thing happened. Okay,
you got divorced, and then sort of as I came out of mourning, I started to get interested in music again. And
do you remember a specific thing? Was it singing? Did you start singing, or you started listening, or going to clubs, or?
Yeah, I was involved in a church at the time, and I had been for quite some time, but I don't know. I think it must have just been sort of the shedding of that relationship entirely, left this new space maybe. I don't know, I'm theorizing. And I remember they had a pretty decent band. It was sort of a contemporary worship service, and I just remember being really interested in singing the harmony pieces. I didn't really want to be on stage or anything like that. I enjoyed the singing process. I enjoyed being part of that, and it was a sort of environment where you could hear yourself. So it wasn't like another choir situation for me. And
so then, did you hear about the barbershop first or Blues Week first, and who told you? And
I went to a music festival that I'd gone to all the way through my childhood called Cornerstone, which is in Illinois, and it's my parents are pretty conservative Christians, and so most of my childhood, kind of starting in grade school up, really Christian music was the only thing that I had access to, but I was allowed to listen to whatever form I wanted of it. And this festival was sort of the embodiment of that. You would go for like 5 days in camp, and you would hear every genre of music. Good music, but sort of all Christian themed. And so I got exposed, and I was allowed to run free through that. So I would walk from the death metal tent to the gospel tent to, some hip hop over here. And as I started to get interested in music again, I called my mom and I said, "Hey, I was just thinking about that festival. Would you be interested in going back?" And so we went back and volunteered. And I went particularly with the purpose of looking for new music, because I knew I would have this opportunity to like just walk away from it if it wasn't speaking to me. And seeing music live is just an amazing experience, right?
Yeah.
There's something really special about it. And so that year I realized that the things I was really drawn to was blues and swing music. In particular, Glenn Kaiser, who is friends with Joe Filisko. And I actually heard him that year. Glenn had invited Joe to come and play. And Joe did a 20-minute train solo, and I was sitting, and you got to imagine, like it's like pitch black, beautiful July night in Illinois. You can hear the crickets. It's dark everywhere except the tents, and I'm in the very, very back of the tent, and there's just this coolness that's coming over after a really hot day, and I'm sitting back there, and Joe starts playing a train solo, and I'd never heard anything like it before, ever. And after the concert, I ran back to the tent where my mom was, and she was actually talking to another blues musician. And I was like, Mom, I just heard the most amazing thing. This is so good. And this guy and his name, and it was just so good. And so went back a second year, had the same sort of experience, was really into the blues stuff, met some blues artists, listened to more of that style of music and blues swing kind of mixtures. Actually, I should say this because it was such a cool thing. I was talking to Joe at Blues Week a couple of years ago, and I said, "I need you to know, Joe, I remember that concert that night. It was an amazing, you probably don't, but it was one of those transformative moments in my life." And he goes, "Yeah, I remember that. We recorded this." And a little bit later on, he came up and he's like, "Here's a DVD." So I actually have a recording of that day.
Wow.
And then kind of fast forward a little bit of time, I came back. I knew I wanted music more. And I was watching TV, which I almost never do. And there was this advertisement for the Bluebird Blues Festival. And I felt I had to go. Like, I cannot explain to you. I didn't want to. I didn't want to go and be in crowds. I didn't want to go and sort of be with different people, and I had no desire, but I had to go. So I packed like a bag with knitting in it because I'm a knitter, and I brought my camera, and I thought, I'll make the best of this, even if it's really not my thing. And I went, and it was a beautiful day out, and watched some outdoor stuff. I don't remember who was playing. And then it started to get hot, so I went inside, and Daryl Davis was finishing up his performance, and he was going through his history of boogie. He walked through the blues, and And so that was like what I walked into. It was Daryl like at his finest. And then like Warner Williams played, and then Phil Wiggins and the Chesapeake Cheeks got up and they started playing. And I'm like, this is amazing.
That's a sound. Yeah.
This is amazing. And then Phil sang Roberta. And I kid you not, my life changed. Like in that moment, something inside me just began. And I stayed to the end of that set. I think there was another group after that I watched, and I went home, and I remember driving home going, what is going on? Something important just happened. And I remember driving on the Beltway going, what am I feeling? What am I feeling? What am I feeling? What am I feeling? And I walked in my front door and I was like, I have to sing this music. No, I have to sing this music. I must. This is something I have to do. And I remember like being like, all right, let's see how long this lasts. Because, you go through those phases where you're looking for the thing and you're like, I'll write a book. And, you sit down at the computer and it's like,
Page
that was,
one. Yeah, okay.
Exactly. That was a nice idea. Not happening. And I thought, all right, let's ride it out. Let's see where it goes. But it didn't go away. I had to. And so I started doing internet searches trying to figure out, like, I knew nothing about the music. And, I don't even remember how, but somehow I found the Archie's page. I think maybe they were at the back of the brochure from the festival. But I found it and it said open jam, open, all levels welcome. And I'm like, well, that's me. And I walked and I put it on my calendar, and I went in the first time, and because it said something about 1:00 blues time that the open jam started. Yeah. And I was like,
2:30.
okay. But I was thinking, okay, half an hour, right? So I come in, it's like 1:30, and there's no one there except Jim Land and like 2 other people. And Jim is just the most wonderful, the best person to meet when you walk in. He's so welcoming. And he's like, hi, what do you play? And I'm like, I don't play, but I really want to sing. And he's like, well, come on, sing a song for us. And I'm like, I don't know any. And he's like, well, learn one, and next week come back. And that's it. That's the story. I came back the next week with a song, and luckily it was a blues, and it was a 12-bar with Bessie Smith's Backwater Blues. And it just sort of went from there. People were so encouraging, and they sort of swept me along and just kept on telling me, this is, make it your own. This is your music. You can do this. When are you putting a band together? It's been just this process of just being almost pushed at the beginning forward. And,
wow, it's remarkable, very inspiring. I had similar types of things happening because I'm just going along being a lawyer and not really playing music, having fiddled around with harmonica a lot of my life, playing row, row, row your boat and that kind of stuff. And just having all of a sudden I realized, oh, blues harp, and started looking for blues jams. I knew nothing about blues. Finding that DC Blues Society did a jam at just near DuPont Circle, I started going Sunday afternoons, taking the kids. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what keys. I needed to figure out the keys to the harp, all that. Met Miles Spicer, and he said, hey, how you doing? And he told me about the barbershop, said you got to go to Blues Week. I signed up right away. There wasn't any question about it. It's interesting. I think people do. Grant Dermody talked about being kind of blown away by a single note from Sonny Terry. So it's like you kind of you got good religion, but you're getting music. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, I feel so lucky. I really do. I'm not a huge believer in like moments or love at first sight or anything like that. Like, and yet, I can point to that one moment in that auditorium. And I'm so glad I had my camera, right? I have photos from that day. But I can point to that one moment and go, I see where all of the things around this had an impact and were bringing me to that moment. But that is the moment. Now here's the hard part: sitting in a room with Phil Wiggins and singing, like doing that with people that have had that kind of impact. And that's the kind of place the barbershop is, right? Like
Right.
Ian Walters walks in the door and says, sing a song for us, Nina, and having to sort of do that, that's trippy. And I still find myself a little bit taken aback by the opportunity to interact and learn and be encouraged by these people that have made music that's so important to me personally.
Yeah, it's really special. It is, it's basically magic. And I know Phil, he's a remarkable player, very distinctive. I've heard him do Roberta, so I know what you're talking about. So then...
it's one of those songs, too, right? Like, this is what I love about the blues. You can sing it so many ways. There's so much meaning and truth in it. You can sing it ironically. You can sing it as, the down and out guy. You can sing it as this is the longing of my soul. And it can all be completely sincerely honest. And I just love that. And that night in particular, he was singing it from the deep parts of his heart, that longing place. And I think that's probably what touched me.
So you've been playing with Jeff Clare for a while. Did you meet up with him at the barbershop? How did you make that connection?
A little bit, sort of. I don't know. So I definitely had run into Jeff at the barbershop. He was stopping by every once in a while there, because I was like a regular when I was learning, because it was my classroom, right? Like I was there whole 4 hours, and I would take, when people would take smoke breaks, I would follow them outside and ask them questions, and I had notes, and I was there to learn. And I remember him being around and connected to people that I was asking questions of, like Donna Fletcher, and so he was there. But then I think Jim Land was encouraging me to sort of step out and explore some of the other blues jams in town, and particularly the electric jams. And at the time, this was 4 years ago, right? The Zoo Bar was really a really important jam in the DC area, right? Mm-hmm. It was Big Boy Little hosted the jam, and it was just a really neat place. Had you ever been there?
I don't think I went to the jam, no.
Oh, it was something special. It was, and Jeff hung out there a lot, and I remember him sort of, I think we were sitting at the bar or something, listening to some other people play, and he's like, I'd really like to play with you. We should get together. And I'm like,
nice.
No. At the time, I was getting those kind of offers quite a bit, and I just wasn't thinking of myself as being anything more than a hobbyist. And then I went to Blues Week, and I was at the point where I was like, I'm either, this is just another hobby, or I'm doing this for serious. And I went into Blues Week thinking, I'm doing this as a hobby. This is just going to be like my photography or, anything else in my life. This is just a nice thing that I do, and I've learned it to the level that I'm going to go. And so people would say these things to me like, yeah, when you're starting your band, or, if you want to play together. I'm like, play out? What's that? So, but it changed at Blues Week, and I came home and I'm like, I'm doing this for serious. I don't care what it takes. I'm doing this. I want to sacrifice. I would be happy to make the sacrifices to do this. Be poor? That sounds great. Let's do it. And so I started thinking, as I started really getting my digging in, I was like, I need to be able to play with other people. And I thought about Jeff, and I did like his playing. And so I kind of was like, yeah, let's do it. Every time I would see him, he would go, let's play together. And I finally was like, okay, let's do it.
Well, it's just so inspiring because I think a lot of people have had that type of thing, and particularly after not playing music for a while, or even really not having played music much in your life, can you really do this? And then it grabs you, and then you find a situation. Jeff is a fabulous player.
Ugh,
we were talking about that. He really is good. So you guys sound great together, and you really, it's just a great set of music that you do.
It's perfect too. I mean, I think one of the things that no one ever told me, and I thought was so, I wish more people talked about, is I think because musicians tend to do it intuitively, is not every musical relationship is going to pan out.
Right.
So you kind of go in and you court each other and like, hey, let's see if this works, and then you really see if it works. And with Jeff, I didn't have that background. I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. So I was really lucky to run into somebody who really worked in a way that complemented my own style. So we practice every week together.
Nice.
And we woodshed, If we're not getting ready for a gig, we're probably woodshedding a couple of songs. And we like learning at a fair clip. It's been a really great relationship that way, but so lucky because some people, I mean, it can take a long time to find your partners.
Right. So why is it that you sing? You talked a little bit about that. We kind of intimated a little bit. You said you had to. Have you thought more about why it is that you sing, and what can this singing do for us? What does the playing music, getting together, do for everybody?
Purpose.
That's what's the purpose? Yeah,
I have thought about that a lot. When you watch entertainers, the big ones, the ones that make it really big, they often have big visions and dreams or things that they want to teach or educate about, and those are role models in a lot of ways. And I've spent a lot of time wrestling with that. I think I have to sing because I feel so much. And singing is one of the few places where you're allowed to express all of that. And so from a purely selfish level, it's the place where I can let it all out and use a set of tools. Before we started recording, we were talking sort of about how music transcends and using the tools that add meaning, that are beyond the notes, right? Using that to express the things that I feel is really, like, I don't know how I lived those 15 years without the ability to do that. Maybe because I was doing the classical stuff, which is very much, by the book, exactly the way it is, the intention of the composer is what's most important sort of environment. Jazz is sort of a hybrid of those two things. It's a little bit of intention of composer and then taking and flying with it, right? Soaring through it. So that's me personally. But that's not, that's the reason you sing in your bathroom or around the house like my mom did, right? Like, I really wrestled with this for a long time because I was looking at those, the role models, the people who make it big, and going, they've got these big dreams, and I don't have any big dreams like that. But I think I know what my purpose is. I think that there are two kinds of people, right? There's people who have big dreams and do big things and impact in large, sort of big ways. And then there are people who change the world by serving the person in front of them and the individual, and change the world through the small things that they do and the way that they touch and take care of other people. And I see that as being my role in sort of the big music picture, is that I see my job as being one, when I'm on stage, of comforting other people. Because I know that sometimes the things that I feel, I feel like music is the only place where I get the opportunity to say, this is what I'm feeling right now. And I think when I look out at the eyes of the people that are listening to me, my hope is that if the music is touching them, it's because they're going, yeah, I feel that too. And there is something so important about knowing that you're not alone, whether it be in that sad moment of deep sorrow or absolute joy. Like, there's nothing like somebody who shares it in that same way where you're like, I get it. I'm there with you. And you are experiencing that together. And so, sorry, I'm getting a little teary-eyed about it, but I really, really do. That's what I hope I do. So no big plans to change the world or educate people, but this world can be a really lonely place. And I hope that what I'm doing to the eyes that are looking back at me is I hope they know they're not alone and that they're loved and that the things that they feel and need are important to me too. Even if the only thing I can do is just sort of be that mirror for them. So.
Well, that's really special, Nina. I tell you, I think it's about, connections. We're all sort of in this together, and you said very well and eloquently, how you feel about it, and it's a beautiful purpose, and what you're doing is fabulous, and I appreciate the time you've taken to share that with us. We're about making connections with the intention of doing something good, and you can do it on the macro level or the micro level or any old level, and it's all good. So really appreciate the time. Thanks very, very much for being with us, and we'll talk again about it.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for creating this podcast. The episodes that I've listened to, it's been a really neat connection for me. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, sure thing. Really appreciate it. You've been listening to Planetary Gig Talk, Tales of Music and Magic. I'm your host, Jefferson Glassy, Chief Spiritual Dude of the Planetary Gig Society. We talk with musicians and others about the power of music and how we can use music to help create a better world. Please check out our website, www.planetarygigs.org, for information about some of the organizations promoting music and musicians, resources about the power of music, books, movies, articles, including new research on music and the brain. We welcome your support. The Planetary Gig Society is a Section 501c3 charitable organization, and you can donate on the website. You also can receive a free email signature block demonstrating your support for Planetary Gig Society. Please follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Planetary Gigs. And we want to thank fabulous musician and teacher Eric Weinberg of Little Eric Studios for the Planetary Gig Talk music titled Chill Kid, It's Saul. So please check out Planetary Gig Talk on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher. Subscribe and hear all the upcoming episodes. Thanks very much.